Let me tell you something that took me decades of reading, writing, arguing, laughing, and occasionally losing my mind to figure out most people are not living their lives. They are living someone else's program, a script handed to them by their parents, their government, their television set, their fear. And the tragedy isn't that they accepted the program. The tragedy is that they don't even know it's running. I've spent my entire intellectual life poking holes in consensus reality. And what I found on the other side of every hole was the same thing: possibility, raw, terrifying, exhilarating possibility. The possibility that you are not fixed, that your habits are not your destiny, that in 7 days, not 7 years, not 7 lifetimes, you can begin to fundamentally rewire how you move through this bizarre, beautiful, incomprehensible universe we've all stumbled into together. Now, before I go any further, I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want you to think about this, not just nod your head and scroll to the next dopamine hit. Here it is. What is one belief you hold about yourself, about your limitations, your potential, your daily capacity that you have never seriously questioned? Just one. Drop it in the comments below, because what we're about to do together in this script is exactly that question, the unquestioned. And I promise you, that single act of honest self-examination is already the beginning of becoming unstoppable. Now, 7 days, 5 habits. Let's get into it. The first habit is what I call reality tunneling with intention. Here's the concept. Every human being on this planet operates from inside what I think of as a reality tunnel, a unique subjective lens through which all experience is filtered. Your reality tunnel was built by your genetics, your early conditioning, your education, the books you've read, the people who've hurt you, the ones who've loved you. It is not objective truth. It is your current operating system. And like any operating system, it can be upgraded. Most people treat their reality tunnel like it's the only tunnel, like it's the highway and everything else is a dirt road. But the habit I'm recommending starting on day 1 is to spend just 15 minutes every morning deliberately inhabiting a different reality tunnel. Read 1 page from a thinker you fundamentally disagree with. Watch 3 minutes of a documentary about a culture radically unlike your own. Have a conversation with someone whose worldview makes you uncomfortable. The goal is not to change your beliefs. The goal is to remind your nervous system that your beliefs are choices, not facts. That distinction alone is worth more than most PhD programs I've encountered. Here's the neuroscience behind it, since some of you will correctly demand evidence rather than philosophy. The brain operates on predictive processing. It is, at its core, a prediction machine. It takes incoming sensory data and runs it through established models to generate your experience of reality. When you consistently expose yourself to perspectives outside your model, you are literally forcing the brain to build new predictive pathways. You are expanding the architecture of perception itself. 7 days of 15-minute reality tunneling sessions will not make you omniscient, but they will make you considerably less imprisoned. The second habit involves what I call guerrilla ontology in your daily language. Now, ontology is the study of what exists, what is real. Guerrilla ontology is my term for the practice of systematically destabilizing your own certainties and those of others, not to create nihilism, but to create space for new thoughts to breathe. Here's the practical application. For the next 7 days, I want you to add 1 small but explosive word to your vocabulary. Maybe. Not as a cop-out, not as passive, non-commitment, but as a genuine epistemological tool. When you catch yourself thinking, I can't do that, the guerrilla ontologist in you says, maybe I can't, and maybe I can. When you hear yourself say, that's just who I am, the guerrilla ontologist says, maybe that's who I've been, and maybe that's not the whole story. The philosopher Alfred Korzybski, one of the most underrated minds of the 20th century, spent his career arguing that our language literally programs our nervous systems. He said, and I agree with every cell in my body, that the map is not the territory. The word is not the thing. The story you tell yourself about yourself is not you. It is a map. And maps, unlike territories, can be redrawn. Starting today, starting with one word, maybe. The third habit is something I practiced in various forms since my early 20s, and it is the single most disruptive thing you can introduce into a comfortable, stagnant life. It is deliberate novelty. Every single day, for 7 days, do one thing you have never done before. Not necessarily something dramatic, not necessarily something that requires a passport or a psychiatric evaluation. Just something new. A new route to work, a new genre of music during your morning routine, a new food, a new conversation topic with someone you've known for years, a new physical movement your body hasn't tried. The reason this works is profound and well documented in cognitive science. Novelty triggers the release of dopamine, not the shallow dopamine hit of checking your notifications, but genuine exploratory dopamine, the kind that evolution designed to reward learning and discovery. Novel experiences also create what neuroscientists call episodic memory density. When every day looks the same, your brain compresses time, years vanish. But when each day contains something new, something your brain had to actually process and encode from scratch, time expands, life feels longer, fuller, more vivid. 7 days of deliberate novelty won't just make you feel more alive. The research suggests it will literally restructure the neural networks associated with creativity and problem solving. I spent years studying the Western magical tradition, Eastern philosophy, quantum physics, stand-up comedy, and guerrilla theater, partially because I was genuinely curious about all of it, and partially because I had learned something fundamental. The person who has visited the most reality tunnels is the hardest person in the world to truly stop. They have too many options, too many perspectives, too many tools. Become that person. It takes 7 days to begin. The fourth habit is perhaps the most ancient and the most consistently validated by modern science, and it is the one most people in the developed world are catastrophically, almost comically bad at. It is the practice of intentional stillness. I'm talking about meditation, but I'm not talking about it the way wellness influencers talk about it, as though it were a luxury spa treatment for your mind. I'm talking about it the way the serious practitioners talk about it, as a technology for observing the mechanics of your own consciousness. Here is the thing about the mind that nobody in your school system ever told you. You are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are events that occur in your awareness. They arise, they pass, and most of them, I would estimate, the overwhelming majority are recycled noise, old programs running on autopilot. The mind chatters. It catastrophizes. It rehearses past failures and imagines future disasters. It is a magnificent, terrifying, endlessly creative machine. But it is a machine, and you are the one who is supposed to be driving it. 10 minutes of daily meditation, 10 minutes of simply sitting still, watching your thoughts without chasing them, observing your breath without controlling it begins within days to produce measurable changes in the brain. We're talking increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, reduced reactivity in the amygdala, enhanced connectivity between the default mode network and the executive control network. What that translates to in plain English is this. You become less reactive, more creative, more capable of choosing your response to circumstances rather than being ambushed by them. In 7 days of 10-minute sessions, you will begin to feel the difference. In 30 days, people around you will notice. In a year, you will not recognize the version of yourself who didn't do this. Now we've come to the fifth habit, and it is the one I am perhaps most personally invested in because it is the habit that has defined my entire professional life. It is the discipline of writing your reality. Every single day for 7 days, I want you to write. Not a lot, not a novel, not a manifesto, although manifestos are underrated and I encourage them. Just half a page, 500 words, a journal entry, a letter you'll never send, a description of what you observe that day through your increasingly adventurous reality tunnel. Here is why this matters beyond the obvious therapeutic benefits that every psychologist since Freud has acknowledged. Writing forces precision. The mind in its raw, unwritten state is a swamp of vague impressions, half-formed intuitions, contradictory impulses, and unexamined assumptions. The moment you put thought into language, you are forced to commit. You are forced to clarify. And in that act of clarification, you discover what you actually think as opposed to what you assumed you thought. I have written millions of words in my life, and every single time I sat down to write something, I was certain I understood. I discovered something I didn't know I believed. That is not a bug. That is the entire point. There is also a practical reality engineering dimension to this habit. When you write your goals, your intentions, your vision of who you are becoming, you are doing something the research calls implementation intention formation. You are creating a cognitive roadmap that your brain will begin almost automatically to navigate toward. Athletes know this. Entrepreneurs know this. Every successful person I have ever studied has maintained some version of a written dialogue with their own developing reality. You are not writing a diary. You are writing a blueprint for a more functional, more interesting, more unstoppable version of your nervous system. So there they are, 5 habits across 7 days. Reality, tunneling with intention in the morning. Guerrilla ontology through your language throughout the day. 1 act of deliberate novelty every 24 hours. 10 minutes of intentional stillness for your brain's executive architecture. And half a page of written reality engineering before you sleep. Now, I want to be honest with you, because I have always found honesty more interesting than motivation. These habits will not make your life perfect. I am deeply suspicious of anyone who promises perfection. What they will do, what I can tell you from experience and from evidence, is make your life more your own. And that is not a small thing. In a world that is relentlessly trying to sell you someone else's program, reclaiming authorship of your own reality is an act of profound, courageous, almost revolutionary personal power. The philosopher and psychologist William James, the great American pragmatist, once wrote that the greatest discovery of his generation was that human beings could alter their lives by altering their attitudes. I would update that for the 21st century and say the greatest discovery available to you right now is that you can alter your nervous system, your perception, your habits of thought, your relationship to possibility, not in some distant future when conditions are perfect, but starting in the next 7 days with habits so simple they almost seem beneath the scale of the transformation they can produce. That is the nature of effective change. It rarely announces itself with fanfare. It arrives quietly, in small, consistent actions, in questions asked with genuine curiosity, in 15 minutes of uncomfortable reading, in 10 minutes of silence, in half a page of honest writing, and then one morning 7 days from now, or 30, or 100, you wake up and realize that the voice in your head sounds different. It sounds less like a program running on old code and more like a person who has decided deliberately and with full information to be exactly who they are. That is what unstoppable actually means. Not invulnerable, not fearless, not immune to failure or confusion or the gorgeous absurdity of being alive in this particular moment of history. Unstoppable means that when the world pushes, you have enough internal architecture to stay in motion, enough reality tunnels to find a new path, enough self-knowledge to know the difference between an obstacle and an invitation. 7 days, 5 habits, and a willingness to ask the question I asked you at the beginning, What is the one belief about yourself that you have never seriously questioned? I hope you've been thinking about it. I hope you'll share it below, because the conversation in the comments is part of this too. Every person who reads your answer and recognizes something of themselves in it is someone whose reality tunnel just got a little wider. And that, in my experience, is how the world actually changes, not from the top down, but from one curious, courageous, questioning mind to another. If this resonated with you, if even one sentence landed differently than you expected, then share it with someone who's been stuck. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of thinking. And whatever you do, start today, not Monday, not next month, today. Because the program you're running right now is not the only program available to you. And the universe, in its infinite, chaotic, hilarious generosity, has been waiting for you to